esports of today? Is it just a distraction or a new vision for all sports?
Morning, everyone. There we go. My name's Paul Witten. Currently at SIS, have been for the last 8 years. I'm 20 years in this industry, and before that, very much in technology and disruption, and trying to make things different. This is a tremendous talent group, and I'm really excited to hear some of the things they've got to say. First off, perhaps we could have a quick introduction, who you are, who you're working for, and your key focus for being here in Manila.
Sure, thank you, Paul. My name is Guan. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Pinnacle. So Pinnacle has been doing esports from year 2010, and it's become one of our biggest USPs. And we are continuing to push esports both from a product side as well as we've started investing in esports partnerships. And very honored to be here discussing esports with everyone here today.
My name is Vladan Blagojevic. I'm business development manager for Odin. Odin is a esports betting solutions provider. That's pretty much it. I'm in the esports for more than about 10 years.
Hi guys, I'm Tryke Gutierrez, the CEO and co-founder of Tier 1 Entertainment. It's also the company that owns Blacklist International, which is an esports team here in Southeast Asia. Currently, we're in 5 countries, and we also manage 1,000 KOLs across the region with 500 million combined following.
There's some tremendous numbers. Now, we're going to get some different perspectives, I hope. Let me start with a question, which is, how do you see the state of esports today? Which is a sweeping question. Please choose how to answer it. Maybe, Tryke, I can start with you.
So for me personally, I started out in esports around 2010 as a player. And I think generally the ecosystem has really grew since then. From all the PC days of mall events, tournaments, and all that. Eventually, it got into arenas, receiving multi-million dollars in venture investments, and to now, people saying that it's becoming a bubble and popping in the West because the numbers have not really shown in terms of monetization, right? But I think here in Southeast Asia, the story is really different. It's because, for one, there is the whole mobile esports industry that exists here that doesn't exist in the West. So, for instance, in 2017, the total viewership of esports in terms of hours were around 950 million. Actually, in 2021, it's around 3 billion already, and 950 million is coming from mobile. This is excluding Chinese platforms, right? So I think in terms of what esports is today, it's not just what we know of, which is console and PC. It's also mobile, and there's a lot of institutions right now that have established themselves in the space, meaning like broadcast organizers. All of these things have really matured in a way after a decade now.
So I'm a big fan of numbers, and we performed multiple researches based on how much volume does esports betting take from all sports betting. And per Statista and their researches, it's about 5 to 10% of the whole sports betting in the world currently when we are speaking about the regulated markets. And commenting on that side is also we work with brands such as Stake.com that was mentioned on the earlier panel, Betway, YOLO Group, Sportsbet, etc. Esports for them is pretty much the same as this report says, from 5 to 10% pretty much.
Jay?
Just to echo what Tryke was mentioning, because 2010 happened to be the year when we kind of offered esports as a fun product because our trading director at the time is a big esports fan, and he thought it would be entertaining just to put the odds up. And it's been sitting on the side, and from year 2016, I think that's the first time we noticed it started becoming, a key part of our revenue, starting from Asia. And since then, the growth never stopped. During COVID, we saw 40% growth in esports turnover when nothing else was on. In 2017, definitely, I think we saw that esports bubble popping had an influence on the esports turnover. But this year, we're back to the growth trajectory. Looking at the regional, definitely seeing a lot of interest from Southeast Asia, but LATAM as well is a huge market that's emerging for esports.
If I may add, I think the biggest esports skyrocketed during the COVID, right? Because there was no other events being played out, no football, no basketball, nothing else. So like if you're looking at the chart, like it skyrocketed. Before that, it was like steadily growing, right? Like year by year, then it skyrocketed, and now we are coming back to the, like Jane said, to that trajectory with it grows exponentially, but slowly, not major jump as in COVID.
So we've got an interesting mix. I'll come back to the regional differences in a moment, if I may. But obviously, Pinnacle has a wide portfolio of traditional sports as well as esports. And that T-sports definition, where do you see the two? Because, I mean, the panel is about the difference really between esports and T-sports or traditional sports. What are you seeing across your customer base in terms of performance, in terms of appetite? And then we'll come back to regional in a moment.
I definitely think there is a good crossover. Obviously, on the side, for us, we offer different verticals of products, including casino as well. So you kind of wish you could cross-sell between different products. So between esports and traditional sports, we see over 80% of our esports players, they also bet on traditional sports. But definitely when you look into their customer behavior, then when you really want to grow that esports turnover, you do need to kind of speak to a different community. So they could be placing one or two bets here out of interest for big events. But for the ones who seriously bet on esports on a regular basis, that's a community where you do need to put different attention in and put in different marketing efforts for.
I'm not an operator, so I do not have these kind of statistics, but I strongly believe that demographic between traditional sports and esports is a lot different, and that esports players do not tend to bet too much on regular sports. So, and in my opinion, the esports bettors are more valuable because per some statistics, again, average bet for esports is much higher than traditional sports, and it also comes with these younger demographic, they are getting used to with telephones. My kid, which is like 3 years old, he takes a phone, right? So they grew up with computers, with video games, with everything, and they had this love for this IT industry. So most of them became, IT engineers that are doing good work, that have higher income than the regular guys who are, let's say, 40, 50 years old, and their buying power is much bigger than these traditional bettors in traditional sports. This is why I think that from the perspective of average bet, they are much more valuable than the guys on the traditional sports.
So it's an interesting change in dynamic here from 80% crossover to very different audience. Tryke, you come from a very specific esports background. How do you see the parallel between esports and traditional sports, or do you not see it in this market space?
I think generally it's just a conversation of attention for me. Obviously, like every person has a finite, like hour of entertainment time. Like generally, and I feel like if you are betting on something, you would need to be invested in the whole of its ecosystem, right? Whether you're a casual bettor or a hardcore bettor, you still need to have a general understanding of what you're betting on. And I feel like if you are someone that follows sports, obviously that's what you're going to bet on, right? But with Gen Zs and millennials, in of our generation, we grew up watching and playing video games. So I think it's really the difference between what are you interested in, who do you follow, what type of leagues do you really like follow, and who are the types of athletes do you also follow? Because like in the old day and age where people only followed basketball and football, obviously we all know Messi, Ronaldo, Michael Jordan, and all of these people, but we have kids now who actually follow the likes of Dendi or like the new generation Dota players and the CS:GO players, and because of that, if you're invested in that emotionally, then at times you bet on it also financially. So I guess it's just a natural, organic transition of entertainment consumption and how do you invest your money into what you believe in.
So sorry.
I wanted to add that, like, I believe the biggest crossover are these Z simulators, and I think you might agree with me because you are offering them as well, right? So we have these Z simulators where we are simulating football and basketball, Trojan, FIFA games, NBA 2K games, and what we see from volume perspective, from turnover perspective, is that where there are no championships being played out, like now in the summer, there is no content, right? People tend to bet on these because they are very close to the traditional sports itself.
familiarity is a big thing there, definitely. Tryke, you talk about audiences and the difference between traditional sports and esports, but when I look at esports, I see lots of different communities who don't cross over even within esports. So there's a CSGO community, and I use community in the widest sense here, the CSGO community, a League of Legends community, a Dota. Is that ever going to be a crossover, or is that very much completely different audiences?
I think generally it's a different audience altogether. I think the answer for me is an answer that I got from one of the panels I've been to in Dubai. I think what he said resonated to me, and he said this. He thinks that in any country there's usually a game that transcends to a certain like culture in that country, and that makes people understand what esports is. So, for example, in the Philippines, it might have been Dota. For example, in Europe, it might have been CS:GO. In the US, it might have been League of Legends. In Japan, it might have been Valorant, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like the first game that will get into the mainstream of any country is just the first step towards understanding the others. Because once you understand the beauty that esports brings, like as an audience, of the feeling of it still feels like sports, you'll then understand what are the other games like, what are their communities and such. And that's why I think, in conclusion, what I want to say is also, I think she was right on when she was saying about you need to build a different infrastructure for your marketing when it comes to gaming. And at the same time, that's why community marketing and KOLs are very important. Because I think if you want to be able to localize your messaging towards different communities, then tapping a KOL in different communities is a way to go. And the second way is just really be in those communities at the same time, because it's not a top to bottom approach, but once you do this bottom to top approach in a way, it gets you organic reach and conversions that you might not be able to see in any traditional media as well.
Speaking about the titles itself, I think it's tied to regional things. Like this is very comparable to traditional sports. For example, in US, MLS is not as popular as NFL, right? And in Europe, basketball is not as popular as football. When you go to India, for example, they are everything is about the cricket. So in the games itself, it's pretty similar. So Dota is popular in some regions, League of Legends is popular in some regions, CS:GO or now Counter-Strike 2 that is coming out will be popular in some regions. It really depends on the mindset of the current of the people in the specific regions. And I think that this is one of the factors that is really comparable to traditional sports.
So when we talk about community and engagement and understanding the consumer and putting a betting proposition to them, I've got two questions around this. The first is, what makes a good betting product? So if you take those esports, either a sports simulation or what I would call a conventional esport, what amongst those firstly makes a good betting proposition? And then the second part of the question will be, and who's doing it well? Who is engaging with those communities? Who's creating the markets and who's driving this industry forward? Jane, maybe I could start with you.
Perhaps just to answer the first question, in my opinion, there are a few dynamics that adds to a good product. Obviously, coverage and uptime is quite important. The other important factor is this is happening across traditional sports and esports, but probably more so with esports. People love watching the game live, and that's when majority of the betting actions are also happening. So having a really solid live experience is also so crucial in gaining that traction as well as customer retention. And lastly, going back to the regional focus, localization is key. So understanding which market you're marketing. If you're targeting Southeast Asia, the mobile titles and the Dota is absolutely important. And if you're looking at Nordics, for example, then CSGO is your top market. So understanding that region and investing in that community is also key.
Well, we are here speaking about this so-called Generation Z, right? So Generation Z span of attention of young people is very short. So you need to keep them entertained to actually and keep them engaged. And what Jade mentioned, uptime of it is really important, and also number of the side markets that you are offering during the live. There are studies from network of our clients. More than 80% of turnover happens in live, which is like a big, massive chunk of turnover. And to get that kind of a turnover, you need to have a big number of side markets that will keep these players engaged. And also, like in terms of widgets, different statistics, you don't want them to go somewhere else. You want to have like this full house product that when they come to your website, they can find everything they need to in order to place a bet. And then you need to offer them these side markets, to make them interesting, like the new product such as player props, but not traditional one like in sports. There is like a battle of players. So for example, you're gonna have in CSGO Simple versus Zyvo, and you're gonna bet who gonna perform better at a certain match. So it's very entertaining for the younger the audience, because like colleague said, like they're fans of these players, like older people are fans of football players, basketball players, etc. So they want to see them succeed in this.
I mean, to me, like as someone who has been, like looking into the space and is endemic in the gaming space, what I see personally is, of course, at the core of it is you need to be able to pick between who are the winners in the most relevant matches across the world. I think that's the first one. But I think the second important point in terms of a product is really the fintech part of it, because at the end of the day, like how do you bet on in these betting sites are very important too, because especially if you're in Southeast Asia where credit card penetration is close to nothing, then it's very important to be working with multiple fintech partners for you to be able to have that access towards your community. And I think the third is really lowering the bite size in terms of being able to do things in your site, because not a lot of people here are ready when it comes to like bigger basket sizes when it comes to their place. In terms of the player, I think I'm biased because our partner is Rivalry, but for me, like Rivalry has really played a huge part in terms of the esports ecosystem here in this region, just because they've done a lot of things that are very organic and at the same time have really converted into business as well. One example is, for example, we did a Dota 2 team together in which we announced that we're doing an all Filipino team. So that definitely resonated in terms of like the Filipino culture differently, just because in a country that people believe in their own talent, right? When you put up a all Filipino team like that, then people just follow you, and they will eventually follow, like the organizations that follow them. Beyond that, they've been doing a lot of shows and all of these influencer marketing activations that have been, I think, that are doing well generally.
That's great. So, I mean, Rivalry, great example of a company that's come in very specifically to the esports world, taking some lessons from traditional sports, but not actually coming from that heritage. Whereas, Vlad, your customers typically are sports books with traditional sports who are adding esports to it. Is there anything that you can see that's different about the way that Betway or some of your other partners behave that will be a lesson for other people to take?
I think you need to make a dedicated team. Especially marketing is really important there. You need to have a team of marketing people that actually understand the ecosystem. I saw so many brands that they have these senior marketing people that are very good in traditional sports, and they want to use them in esports, but because they are so long in traditional sports, they fight with the time that is coming, so they tend to fail because they cannot adapt to the industry that is rising. So I think the biggest challenge there is to actually in esports world. And esports, it's a new thing, right? So like in the beginnings of the traditional sports, you have a lot of shady people and people that are there for the fast money, and you need to be aware of those kind of people. So I think the biggest challenge is to find a proper people who can actually get the things done. And I think this is the biggest challenge for all of the operators out there that are doing esports marketing.
Jane, you must have come across conventional trading directors. By conventional, I mean uh, people in their 40s and 50s who grow up on horse racing or football as the core sport. How do you persuade them that esports is the new thing?
So it really depends. Actually, I think just to can on both of your comment earlier. So we happen to work very closely with Rivalry as well, and we also work with some because Pinnacle has a B2B arm. We also work with some traditional sports books. So we definitely have seen different mindset for people. I think the key is whoever's driving that marketing, they need to have that esports background. So we have seen the likes of Rivalry. They come in, they understand esports, and they did the right thing every step of the way, and they're spending their marketing dollars smartly. But we also seen big brands. They came in, they kind of had the traditional sportsbook mindset, where put the logo in front of the jersey and hoping that it's going to be a successful marketing campaign. Unfortunately, that's not how it works with the esports audience. They would like to see whoever's pushing that marketing being dedicated and show their commitment of investing into that community. So when they come in with that mindset, the likely scenario is they spend a lot of money, but they don't see the results, and they think esports may not be their thing. So I think it's kind of like a hand in hand. When you're talking to someone who understands esports, it's an easy sell. But if they're coming in with a mindset that doesn't necessarily fit in with esports, then it's they when they don't see the results, it's hard to convince them.
I mean, a term that's often used is authenticity. And Gen Z, in fact, everybody, it's not a Gen Z specific thing, everybody can tell when somebody is sincere, or a company really actually is behind something rather than paying lip service to it. So I think authenticity is coming across from what all three of you are saying, that you need the right people in the marketing team, you need the right betting product approach, and you need the right understanding of your consumer to make it work. One of the things that I think esports can learn very much from traditional sports is integrity and making sure that markets are secure and that games are safe. How do you see the status of that at the moment across the esports landscape? Is it a problem? Is it a perceptual problem, or is it not a problem at all?
I think it's definitely still a very real problem, and more so the case in certain esports titles compared to the rest. And especially, when we are working with our clients as betting brands, it's something that we kind of help them along the way as well. For example, when you're doing a esports marketing campaign, it's very important that you ensure the integrity side is also covered, because the last thing you want is to portray that wrong image where this is a betting brand and you come in, there's some doubts as to how clean the marketing campaign you're doing is. So we have a dedicated esports integrity team, and we work quite closely with the likes of eSig, who monitor the integrity of the esports side. And I know that at Ording you do the same. So.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. Integrity, you can fight it, but integrity is issue even in like traditional sports, especially in lower tier leagues. And the big disadvantage, like not disadvantage, but in esports, the issue is actually online gaming. So where you have online competitions, players playing from home, it's very hard to monitor it. What we are proud of is like actually we take integrity very serious, and like Jay mentioned, we collaborate also with likes of ESIC and between us as well. So we communicate. Our risk team built a quite extensive list of blacklisted teams, players, the ones that had integrity concerns, where we could show like toxic traffic that are related to either match fixing, either cheating, etc. There was this issue in Peru on the Lima Major where the team got banned, where we also played a very active part in it, like finding it out, communicating with the organizers, with the ESIC. And I think the biggest advantage of it is that if the whole industry works together, so all the operators, tournament organizers, suppliers, if we combine the forces and cooperate on this side, that we together we can actually make the things move forward, because we all have different data sets, right? From multiple brands, from multiple segments, multiple regions. And if we can combine these segments and notify each other when these kind of things are happening, I think that we can raise the integrity bar by far.
I Yeah, I think for me, it's a very important time for esports, because I mean these things will eventually happen just the way it happened in sports, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like with the game publishers now wearing the league owner's hat, because it wasn't like that before. When esports started, games were available. There were third-party organizers organizing for the games, for esports competitions, right? But now with the games being the league owners themselves, I think what changed is really they can really put their foot down when it comes to like banning and really stopping these people once they're caught. So I think that's very important because I mean at the end of the day you can put a ban on a certain person and they'll never ever play the international or any other like big ticket tournaments out there. So I think that alone is good as a step forward, but definitely there's a lot to improve in terms of that aspect.
We've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to come to the audience. This is a tremendous panel with a ton of knowledge across a whole sphere. Any questions for the panel? Okay, so we do have a couple. Can we start with the lady at the back, please? If you could just say your name and where you're from.
Hello. Hi, I'm Ange from Rivalry. Thank you for mentioning us. I just have a question. You mentioned that esports marketing is very important, which we totally agreed on. And as experts in the field, are there specific esports trend that you see is upcoming or something that we can capitalize on in terms of marketing? Because in Rivalry, we explored already sponsorships, the influencers, but are there any new insights in the esports industry that you think that is something that marketers can actually capitalize on in the next few years or few months?
I think personally, at the end of the day, marketing is really about stories and who are telling the stories. Because I think authenticity can be bought by getting the people who should be telling the story. But I think in terms of esports, what I don't see yet that I think is going to happen is there will be more meet and greet activations across different regions that don't include tournaments. It's because right now, watching an esports player is just watching them in tournaments online. Offline, you'll see them, but they're in the stage and you'll never really get to interact with them. Right. And I think esports can learn a thing or two with the traditional sports way of there needs to be an actual interaction between the athlete and the community. So I think activations that Ronaldo has done, Kobe has done, like all of these superstars have done in different markets where they just go and meet their fans, I think is something that we haven't seen in esports and hopefully like we see in the future.
I would actually fight it. I think that esports players engage in much more efficient way than traditional sports players. Because if you are looking at competitions, and I like, for example, what Rivalry did, where I think it was in Brazil with the mascot, where it was engaging with everyone. In esports, players are running through the crowd, saying hello to all the fans. And if you go to football stadium, if you go to basketball stadium, these fans, they cannot interact with the players. They cannot come even close to them. And even when they go, like you mentioned, Ronaldo and others, even when they go with the fans, they have ton of security around them, etc. Like esports players do not do that. They actually interact with fans in much more efficient way because they are behaving natural and not like superstars. So I think I would fight that esports players are actually doing it much better than the traditional sports players.
I can agree to that.
Maybe just 2 cents to answer question. I think one from a product perspective. So one thing esports is different from traditional sports is it doesn't follow a regular calendar for a lot of titles. So for example, in year 2022, we saw a dry spell of esports events, right? And that definitely has an impact on the turnover. Whereas this year we are seeing, there are more events happening. There are some massive ones that's just coming out by ESL. There's a massive Riyadh Masters that's happening right now, and Valorant as a new title has a huge potential. In CS:GO, the new CS2 is coming out, and hopefully that's going to revive the turnover. So that's just on the product side. And from a marketing side, I think there are also some opportunities in creating your own tournaments, campaigns, just to filling the gaps.